we all kind of lose function in our bodies as we get older, right? Like the big things that, if you look at the biggest killers, it's like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. So a lot of medicine is targeting how do you treat that disease. But there's another theory, which is like maybe the root cause of all those things is that our cells are just losing function as we get older, and so you're more susceptible to get these diseases. Like, I'll give you an example. So if you're like, let's say you're in your 20s or 30s, and you have some damage to your cells, like you drink too much, or you get sick, or like and there's a kind of like this insult or damage to your cells. Your cells have the ability to recover from that. When you get older, your cells don't really have the ability to respond as well to these kinds of threats, or like it could be viruses, or eating or drinking too much, or not getting enough sleep, or whatever. They start to lose their function. And so instead of treating like the effects of these diseases, why don't we just try to restore the function your cells had when you were younger? Because like, who wouldn't want to feel like you had the metabolism or immune system or whatever, or the muscle system of like a younger person, right? Mm-hmm. That would just be more years of healthy life, to get stuff done. So anyway, I think we're on the cusp of potentially being able to make a breakthrough in this area. And it's high risk, but I think this is exactly what people should be doing. Like, if you have some success in business, like, try to push the frontier, right? Do something that's really challenging. What we're trying to do is not change the type of the cell. We're trying to just change the functional age of the cell. Like, if it starts as a skin cell, stay as a skin cell, but just be like a younger version of yourself. And so we're searching the vast space of different sets of proteins. They're called transcription factors, which basically turn on and off different genes in the cell. There's like a massive number of combinations of these that are potential. We've developed a high throughput screening system that can test like millions of hypotheses, looking for novel sets of proteins you can put in these cells that change the state of it back to like a younger cell. And we know that.
So you're injecting proteins, and
yeah,
it would be an injection of proteins into the body that the cells absorb?
Yeah, and they're delivered via this thing called lipid nanoparticles. But yeah. It's basically a way to deliver proteins into these cells, and it causes them to turn on and off different genes.
Wow.
Yeah.
How far out do you think you are?
We're going to start clinical trials on our first program probably in the next year or two in humans. And that's where you have to go through FDA, or different countries you can do it in. And then we have 2 or 3 other programs coming along. So I think within like 5 to 10 years, we'll hopefully have candidates ready for, potentially someone could actually go get it prescribed by their doctor in like, hopefully like less than 10 years. But, these are kinds of things that sometimes you need to try a lot of shots on goal to get something that works, right? And it can start to get expensive the later you are down doing these human trials. Like it costs something like $2 billion and takes about 10 years to get a drug to market. And that's with a lot of failures along the way. So, we're putting a lot of capital to see if we can come up with a breakthrough here.
Who wants to be part of that, right? Any way to make us look younger and feel younger, right? Well, thank you so much, David. We're going to be hearing from him in just a few minutes. But our next speaker is Dr. Gita Jensen, a hands-on scientist with more than 35 years of experience in biological sciences and natural products research. As research director at NIS Labs, she helps design research that's not only ethical and effective, but truly meaningful. While she couldn't be here with us in person today, she has recorded a special presentation just for this audience. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name is Gita Jensen, and I'm the research director at NIS Labs. We have conducted clinical research on the Lifewave X39 patch, and I'm speaking to you today to present our results. My background is in immunology. I have a PhD from University of Aarhus in Denmark. I went on to work as a postdoc in cancer biology at University of Alberta in Canada. And I became an assistant professor at McGill University, studying systems biology involving both immune cells and stem cells. And I'm the founder and the research director at NIS Labs. I have worked with research on natural products for over 30 years. We use mainstream tools to ask questions about unusual methods for supporting health. My passion is to find truth in ancient traditional healing methods and to help talk about them in words that modern science can embrace. To do this, I founded our lab, NIS Labs. At NIS Labs, we study the mechanisms that allow our immune cells to travel around in our body to protect everything. Here's a drawing of some sleepy cells, both inside the blood vessel and in the tissue. There are some NK cells and some B cells, some T cells, and some macrophages. This sleepy picture can change pretty rapidly. X39 helps the immune system to be alert and happy. We want the cells moving to protect our entire body in the blood, the skin, the gut, and all parts of us. And we want the cells to communicate. We also study the processes inside ourselves of making cellular energy. Our health is not a simple on-off switch. We know that our overall health is a result of endless interconnected processes, starting with cellular energy, supporting our immune system's alertness, communicating in the body with nerves and chemical messengers, and then a feedback loop with anti-inflammatory effects. Based on how complex our body is, I was very excited when I learned about the X39 patch, a tiny little thing that makes light, not just on its own, but only when it's applied to the skin. When you look at the patch, you don't see the light. I knew we had to study this. We conducted a clinical trial to document what happens within the first few hours after you put on an X39 patch on the back of your neck. The results were very clear, and these results is what I will be presenting to you today. First, I want to tell you about how we did this study, where each person served as their own control. Each study participant came for 2 clinic visits and used the X39 patch on one visit and a placebo patch on another visit. We took blood samples immediately before applying a patch and then at 1 and 2 hours later. People were sitting quietly and resting and doing it in the same way, both on the X39 day and the placebo day, and they rested calmly in a quiet room between the blood draws. Now, the placebo patch looked exactly like the X39 patch, but did not contain the things that make light when it is applied to the skin. And the study was randomized. This means that different participants used the X39 patch on the first visit and placebo on the second visit, and other participants used the placebo on the first visit. The X39 patch and the placebo patch had 2 different numbers written on the back, but neither the participants nor the clinic staff knew which patch was which. Now, while we know that we can measure changes in the blood after consuming natural products, we were not sure what was going to happen when we applied the X39 patch to the skin. We hoped to see some changes, and we expected that they would be mild. Our results were amazing. We had 2 surprises, one that had to do with cellular energy and another that had to do with reduced inflammation. Before I tell you more about these findings, I need to introduce you to those 2 topics. Let's talk about energy first. In order to talk about the ways we documented changes in cellular energy in the X39 study, let's look at the parts inside each of our cells that make energy, the mitochondria. Inside every cell in our body, we have bubbles, tiny little bubbles that are called mitochondria. This is where energy is being made. They are literally the powerhouses of our providing energy for our entire body. The mitochondria have a unique machinery inside, similar to a conveyor belt, that's called the electron transport chain. So that electricity that is being transported is where I have these little lightning bolts on this drawing. They use this electron transport, they use this to supercharge energy into molecules called ATP. So the mitochondria are subcellular energy factories. The ATP is loaded with energy that can be sent out into the body and give energy to our muscles, our brain, and everything else that burns energy for our body to function. So as part of the X39 study, on all clinic visits, we took the blood samples into the laboratory and we studied the mitochondria. And already after 1 hour of wearing an X39 patch, the mitochondria were larger than 1 hour after wearing a placebo patch. This process of getting larger mitochondria is called mitochondrial biogenesis. And we know it can happen within hours after consuming certain nutraceutical supplements. However, we had no idea that this type of change happens and can be measured in the blood 1 hour after putting on an X39 patch. And how it happens, we don't fully understand yet, since we don't fully understand the code for how our cells communicate with light inside the body. Now let's talk about inflammation. Inflammation is related to aging and accelerates aging. And the loss of cellular energy also accelerates aging. Also in terms of regulating inflammation, the X39 patch worked quickly. The anti-inflammatory marker IL-1RA increased rapidly and was increased at 1 hour, and the pro-inflammatory cytokine IL-8 decreased. This change was rapid, creating a boost of cellular communication that helped regulate inflammation. This wave of cellular communication also involved reduced levels of C-reactive protein, another inflammatory blood marker. After that initial boost of anti-inflammatory activity at 1 hour, we observed that at 2 hours, the levels of C-reactive protein were reduced. So it seems that applying the X39 patch to the skin initiates measurable changes that spreads throughout our whole body. It's like adding a drop of water into a silent lake, and the drop starts ripples, and the ripples expand outward. And it starts waves of orchestrated changes in the body involving rapid increase in energy and rapid regulation of inflammation. Now let's shift gears a little. There was a second part to this clinical trial. After the first part of the clinical trial was done, all the participants then used the X39 patch every day for 4 weeks. And this part of the clinical trial allowed us to see what happened with daily use over time. We studied the blood cells after 1 day and 1 week and 4 weeks. And this further helps solidify that applying an X39 patch has effects that we can quantify and that we can discuss scientifically. And the X39 patch works long term. Already after 1 day of using X39, the cells were able to maintain a higher energy production under stress. The small umbrellas here and here over each mitochondria show that they're protected from stress. The green circles show that the size of the mitochondria is protected under stress. And the purple lightning bolts illustrate that the electrical charge inside the mitochondria are protected under stress. The mitochondria can continue to make more energy and more ATP. We tested many other blood markers in all the blood samples in the X39 study, and we saw additional evidence of ongoing changes and adaptation when using the X39 patch. Examples include the anti-inflammatory marker IL-1RA that was increased at 1 week. And the pro-inflammatory markers IL-8 and TNF-alpha were decreased at 1 day and 4 weeks. So when the X39 patch is used daily, the body experiences daily waves of adjustment to cellular energy, cellular resilience, and reduced inflammation. Every time a new X39 patch is applied, a fresh wave of adaptation and boost of energy happens. Now, as I'm winding down my presentation, a reminder to all of us. For us to age gracefully in good health, we need to tend to our body like a garden. We need to clean up the dead leaves, tend to the flowers, keep the soil hydrated and nutrient-rich. The use of the X39 patch generated results showing orchestrated waves of events, starting with mitochondrial biogenesis and continuing with increased mitochondrial membrane potential, anti-inflammatory markers, reduced pro-inflammatory biomarkers, and an increase in energy. I thank you for the opportunity to share with you our scientific results from the clinical trial on wearing the X39 patch. And congratulations to David Schmidt and the Lifewave team for your contributions to natural and gentle support of health and wellness. Thank you.
What if I told you there's a creature that doesn't age like we do? No wrinkles, no slowing down, just endless molting and growing. Meet the lobster, nature's closest thing to biologically immortal. But if they don't age, why and how do they die? And what does it have to do with human aging? First, let's clear something up. Biological immortality doesn't mean can't die. It means the creature doesn't age in the typical sense, no increase in mortality risk over time. Lobsters grow bigger and reproduce efficiently even in old age. Some have lived over 100 years. So what's the secret? Inside our cells, DNA strands are packed into chromosomes. At the ends of those chromosomes are telomeres, protective caps like the plastic tips on shoelaces. Every time a cell divides, those telomeres get shorter. Eventually, they become too short and the cell stops dividing or dies. That's called cellular senescence, and it's a big part of aging. Lobsters produce large amounts of an enzyme called telomerase, even into adulthood. This enzyme adds new sequences to the ends of telomeres, essentially rebuilding them. This means their cells don't suffer the usual wear and tear from division. They can keep growing, healing, and reproducing without signs of aging. But it's not a perfect system. As lobsters grow, they need to molt, shedding their exoskeleton, but the larger they get, the more energy molting requires. Eventually, it becomes too physically demanding. In many cases, they die from complications during molting, not from aging itself. So technically, they're immortal at the cellular level, but not invincible. Could understanding telomerase help us fight aging in humans? Maybe. But unregulated telomerase is also linked to cancer, so it's complicated. For now, lobsters remain a fascinating glimpse into how nature plays by different rules. The immortal lobster? Maybe not forever, but definitely longer than most.
How about that Dr. Gita Jensen, huh? She has become a very valuable partner for us in performing clinical studies. She really wanted to be here today, but had a complication in travel plans, but maybe we'll have her here next year to talk about some additional research that we're doing on other patches with her. She's a fantastic researcher. We're blessed to be working with her. I also really love her accent. You know, she's from Denmark, and something about an American hearing that Danish accent, it just sounds so authoritative. I often wonder if I should adopt an accent to sound more authoritative, but so far what I'm going with seems to have worked, so I'll stay with it. All right, so what are the signs that a cell is aging? So this is where, again, we're going to look towards nature for clues. If we can examine the structure of cells and how they change over time, we can learn about how to stop or even reverse these changes. So let's look at some of them. One is, we know that as cells age, they become more and more dehydrated. Part of this is linked to collagen production. So if we think of collagen like a jello that holds water, and collagen production begins to decline at around age 25, then it makes sense that the cells can hold less water. So this is a very important concept. We want to be able to improve hydration if we're going to change the way that people age. As the cells age, they begin to shrink. And there is what's called a membrane potential. So the electrolytes of the cell hold a charge around the cell membrane. And as we age and the collagen matrix begins to decline, that electrical charge decreases. And one thing you won't normally see in textbooks is that the charge around the cell is intimately linked to the replication of our DNA. The DNA, and that's because this has more to do with biophysics than biochemistry. The DNA is a helical coil. It's an inductor in electrical terms. So as the membrane potential decreases, the amount of energy that the cell has to pass along to a future cell decreases. So this is an important part of how we can define aging, meaning that if we can restore proper hydration, increase the size of the cell, increase the electrical potential of the membrane, we can stop and reverse human aging. That's part of the process. This is also linked to mitochondrial function. So the amount of energy that we have for making new proteins, for repairing damage, is all linked back to the mitochondria. And we know that most people experience mitochondrial dysfunction around age 50 or so. So we want to adapt strategies to keep the mitochondria improving lots of energy, and that's going to help dramatically with our quality of life. Already covered the importance of telomeres. So when we study lobsters, species of ants that don't age or age like human beings, one of the key things that you see over and over again is that their telomeres do not shrink. So we have to have a strategy to address that. Decrease in collagen production. We've already covered that one. Decrease in protein synthesis. So as people get to be 50, 60, 70, they get injured, their ability to heal drops off dramatically, and that's because the ability to make new proteins has declined, and that protein synthesis is again linked to mitochondrial function. So we want to be able to make new proteins so that we can heal. We have to address that. We have to control our detoxification pathways. And there are some simple ways of doing that. But if our body is allowed to accumulate what are called zombie cells, these are cells that don't function but haven't been removed from the body, they will induce oxidative and inflammatory stress on healthy cells and are key in the aging process. So we have to have a strategy for addressing that. Oxidative and inflammatory stress causes breaks in the DNA, damage to healthy tissue. We have to manage that. And then finally, change in genetic expression. So one of the key biological models in human aging is this idea that we begin to lose our library of information of who we are as we age over time. The good news is that what's been discovered is that the information of who we are when we're younger is still there, but that information has gone dormant. So we need to find ways to reactivate that information so the cells can indeed become younger. So let's tackle these one at a time. First, dehydration. What can we do about this? Well, surface tension plays a crucial role in hydration, meaning if you can consume water that through the change in structure or the precise mineral content and the surface tension of the water is lower, it will be able to drive into the cell. And fortunately, this is one of the many benefits of X2O. It is a highly coherent water structure. We're going to see a video of this in the next presentation. But because the water structure of X2O is so coherent, the surface tension drops, and now hydration increases within about 15 seconds of consuming it. The membrane potential. Membrane potential, as it decreases, has all of these negative effects on how our metabolism functions. And one of the things that we found in the very early days of Lifewave was that application of the energy patches not only improved mitochondrial function, but they also increased the volume of the cell. We did that study with Dr. Gita Jensen, where we found the cells actually increased in size, increasing the membrane potential. And that happens within about 20 minutes of the application of the energy patches. So what can we do about mitochondrial function? Everything seems to be coming back to this. So we think of the mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. It's where our bodies are making energy. So if we can't make enough energy, nothing else happens. It's a little bit like if you only have $500 in your bank account, you're not going to have a good time at Disney, right? So we have to increase our reserve of cellular energy, and that's going to happen in the mitochondria. And a decline in mitochondrial function is always related to aging. So keep that in mind. If you only had a strategy for increasing mitochondrial function, you would be way ahead of the game. And fortunately, we have many products that address this problem and improve mitochondrial function. X39, Energy Enhancer, Cellergize, X2O, amongst others. Okay, decrease in telomere length. This would be a medical claim, so I'm only going to say that studies on carnosine have shown that they protect the telomeres from damaging. However, Cellergize, specific nutrients in Cellergize, Cyanothox, and also beta-alanine will not only help contribute to maintaining the length of the telomeres, but beyond that. Collagen. So most people, especially since we're very close to Los Angeles, think of collagen as something that we're going to use to plump up the skin, and that's totally fine. But collagen is the principal protein in the body. About 60% of the protein is collagen, so it's that important to our overall health and function. So when we see that we're elevating collagen production and it has a beneficial outcome on our skin, since the skin is principally collagen protein, then that is also reflected on what's going on inside the body. So if you're simply taking collagen supplements, using one of our patches, even taking vitamin C will stimulate new production of collagen. This is going to show up not only in your skin, but inside the body as well. There's also, of course, many studies which show that X39 and copper peptide specifically will elevate collagen production. So you're getting that benefit. Decrease in protein synthesis. One of the best things that you can do as you age is to exercise and build strength and stamina, and that's muscle protein synthesis. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's very important as a key strategy in anti-aging that you're getting enough protein in your diet. Use as a marker about 1 gram of protein per pound of your body weight. Could be 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. But the key is that when you're looking at your diet, you should be looking at your protein intake and your intake of healthy fats, so you have the raw materials necessary to make these proteins and to heal. And of course, as we've discussed, X39 helps with collagen production and, as we found, overall strength and stamina. So it plays a role in formation of other proteins as well. We also found in our very first clinical study on X2O that it did in fact initiate protein synthesis. We saw the metabolism of amino acids go way up. So one of the things you can do in your experimentation with X2O is add a branched chain amino acid supplement or a protein supplement in X2O before working out, and you may find that your ability to synthesize additional muscle tissue goes up. Sorry, no, I'm going very quickly. We have a lot of ground to cover. Detoxification. So this won't cost anything. If you practice intermittent fasting or regular fasting, it will help to remove these zombie cells from the body. So that's something that you can do that won't cost anything. Also, elevating glutathione. So whether or not that's with the glutathione patch, that's with Celergize, that's with your diet, on a daily basis, get proper hydration and detox, because we're constantly accumulating toxins in our body. Increase in oxidative stress. Well, Cyanfox that we included in Celergize, very, very powerful as a means of managing oxidative and inflammatory stress, along with the combination of our patches. And again, we've already covered this, so I'm going to keep moving along a little bit. Now, one thing that we're doing some very interesting research on is extra virgin olive oil. And we've been doing these experiments where we try to embed specific wavelengths of light, which we're not going to talk about today, into olive oil for producing new effects. And we think that there's going to be some very interesting outcomes to this work. But olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, make sure it's pure, is something you should be including in your daily diet because of all of the benefits. But one of the many benefits is that it's so rich in monounsaturated fats that it provides an anti-inflammatory effect, amongst others. Another benefit, interestingly, well, let's talk about gene expression and get to this because I'm running a little bit behind. X39. One of the key areas of age reversal is how do we reset genes to a more youthful state? So the idea is that if your genes were expressing at the age of a 25-year-old, even if you were 70 or 80 years old, if you had enough energy to drive the process, then eventually all the cells in your body would become 25 or 30-year-old cells. So that's what's exciting about that. The information is there. We just have to access it. And this happens through a process called methylation. But what would be some of the key ways today that we could restore genes to a healthy state? Well, we know one of them is X39. Physical exercise will reset about 70 to 80 genes to a more youthful state. It's not very many when you consider, we might want to be able to reset 15,000 to 20,000, 18,000 genes to a more youthful state. But that's one of the benefits of resistance training and exercise. Olive oil. Actually, another benefit of olive oil, it's more powerful than resveratrol at resetting 2 of the sirtuin genes to a more youthful state. So it's known that there are 8 human sirtuin genes. 2 of those are reset to a more youthful state by olive oil. So yet another benefit by taking that daily. So the short version of this is that when we look at all of the signs and the symptoms of aging, there is very good information to show that there are things that we can do today to improve our health span and our longevity. The primary topic that we want to focus on is gene expression, since the others are resolvable, and how we can restore that information. The implications to this is that the problem of human aging is solvable. And it gives us the hope that not only can we extend how long we live, but we can live productive lives and more youthful lives in the process.